Welcome to the virtual programming of the Ismaili Jamatkhana Center. Under the guidance of His Highness the Aga Khan, who is the 49th hereditary Imam, spiritual leader of the Ismaili Muslims, and a direct descendant of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the Ismaili Jamatkhana Center serves as a place of gathering, learning, and exchange. In addition to providing prayer and assembly space for Shia Ismaili Muslims, the center is also a space for fostering an appreciation of pluralism and for enhancing relationships among faith communities, government, and civil society. Events at the center aspire to stimulate the intellect, encourage dialogue, and celebrate cultural diversity. In the words of His Highness the Aga Khan, pluralist societies are not accidents of history. They are a product of enlightened education and continuous investment of governments and all of civil society in recognizing and celebrating the diversity of the world's peoples. In that spirit, we are excited to present the Voices and Bridges project that celebrates music, poetry, and culture. At the inaugural ceremony of the Aga Khan Music Awards, His Highness the Aga Khan said, "The cultural heritage of Islam has long embraced musical language as an elemental expression of human spirituality. Listening to music, practicing music, sharing music, performing music have long been an intimate part of life for Muslim communities across the world, as has been the chanting of devotional and historical or epic text." Dr. Jacqueline Chow, Senior Curator of Asian Art at the Crow Museum of Asian Art of the University of Texas at Dallas, will introduce the program, our esteemed panelists, and moderate their conversation. We are grateful to Dr. Chow for honoring us with her time and expertise. With that, I present to you the Voices and Bridges. Thank you.
خواب از تو در گریز و تو از خواب در گریز، با خیشتن به خلوت دل میکنی ستیز. خواب از تو در گریز و تو از خواب در گریز، با خیشتن به خلوت دل میکنی ستیز.
دست پاچیت را بطنه مشک مادر چوی هنی هنی، سین صاف چون گچو اینه یارم یانه، سین صاف چون گچو.
Hello, my name is Jacqueline Chow, and I serve as Senior Curator of Asian Art for the Crow Museum of Asian Art of the University of Texas at Dallas. I am pleased to introduce and welcome our special guest to this program's topic on how poetic, musical, and literary cultures and traditions have evolved over time and can serve as a bridge between cultures. Today's conversation features the Voices and Bridges project, an ongoing multilingual and multicultural collaboration between musicians from many parts of the world that brings together languages of ancient cultures such as Persian, Spanish, Arabic, English, Turkish, Bengali, Urdu, Kashmiri, and French to create a new story that celebrates different cultural and musical traditions from around the world. Today, we will learn more about the project, how music and poetry can serve as a healing and transformative tool, and the importance of connection and community during this time. It is my honor to be joined by an esteemed group of panelists. I would first like to introduce Ehsan Matoori. Asani is a composer and music producer and composer of the Voices and Bridges project. Born in 1979 in Iran, he began learning Santur or Persian dulcimer based on Maestro Farmaz Pevar's method at age 9. He has studied instrumental and vocal radif, and also took lessons with Ardavan Kamkar, one of the greatest contemporary santur players of Iran, known for his distinct playing style and tuning techniques. After moving to the United States in 2013, he continued to perform with World Music Masters. He has been a member of the Southern Methodist University, or SMU, World Music Ensemble since 2013, and has been a member of the Silk Road Global Musicians Workshop as a faculty member and performer since 2016. He is the artistic director of the Aram Art World Music Young Ensemble, and his first album, Phantasm, was published in 2019 and streamed more than 1 million times and downloaded on all digital platforms. So congratulations. I'd like to introduce next Dr. Sadaf Munshi, who is a professor and chair of the Department of Linguistics at the University of North Texas, as well as an artist and a writer. Dr. Munshi was born and raised in Kashmir, where she received most of her earlier education, including a bachelor's in biosciences. Before coming to the United States, you also pursued a Master of Arts degree and a Master of Philosophy degree in linguistics from the University of Delhi. Her research focuses on Indo-Aryan languages, and as a leading expert on the endangered languages of South Asia, Dr. Munshi has received 3 awards from the National Science Foundation for her work on the documentation of endangered languages. She served as a linguistic and academic advisor to the Voices and Bridges Project. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Next, I would like to introduce Ali Montazeri, who was born in Tehran, Iran, in 1979. In 1990, Ali began his musical training in keyboard and theory. Also, in 1996, he began learning the tar, a traditional Iranian instrument. And he has played tar and bastar in many Iranian groups since 1997, as well as studied composition. In addition to that, you have composed many pieces. He has composed many pieces for traditional Iranian ensemble, chamber ensemble, vocal, symphonic, orchestra, and musical scores for short movies while pursuing his education. In 2017, he started a graduate program in music theory at the University of North Texas and really has dozens of compositions to his credit and is adept in a number of musical instruments, including flute, violin, clarinet, piano, and tar. And he served as a co-arranger for the Voices and Bridges project. So thank you for being here. And last, I would like to introduce Dr. Ali Asani. Dr. Asani is Murray A. Albertson Professor of Middle Eastern Studies and Professor of Indo-Muslim and Islamic Religion and Cultures at Harvard University. He teaches a variety of courses related to Islam at Harvard. As a specialist on Islam in South Asian contexts, he is particularly interested in the relationship between religion, literature, and the arts in Muslim societies, and the role that the arts can play in fostering a more nuanced understanding of Muslim experiences of Islam. He is the recipient of the Harvard Foundation Medal for his contributions to improving intercultural relations and the Petra Shatuk Prize for distinguished teaching. Most recently, the Harvard Foundation honored him with its Faculty of the Year award for his efforts at making Harvard a more inclusive place. Thank you, Dr. Asani, for being here with us. So I thought I would begin our conversation by first learning a bit more about the Voices and Bridges project. I'm wondering, Ahsan, if you could just speak more about the project overall and just share with the audience just more information about the project in general.
Thank you, Jacqueline. So it's a great pleasure being part of this show, and thanks for the Ismaili TV and the council. So my name is Ehsan Matoori, and I'm Iranian santur player, which you explained it. But just I want to skip about the general definition of the Voices and Bridges, which you shared with us, which was very complete. I'm going to start with a personal like side of the Voices and Bridges. So the lack of this communication skill, which was my big concern at the beginning of my stay in US as an immigrant. Plus, I really wanted to explore I really wanted Iranian music and poems to be explored and heard with people around the world outside the Iran's border, was the main concern of thinking of this idea of the voices and bridges. Plus, I had some personal struggle, like being homesick, can't connect with the people, with the non-Farsi languages with people. So I was deciding to do something to just give my feedback or my response to this lack of the knowledge and these struggles, which you see the Voices and Bridges is a blend and bilingual project, and each culture comes as an ambassador to this project, and they're exploring to the real world.
Thank you so much, Ehsan. I think that's a beautiful way to connect how your personal experience, what drove you to create this amazing collaborative project. I would like to ask actually Dr. Munshi if she would be, as an expert and as a researcher of endangered languages and poetry, and having served as a linguistic advisor to the Voices and Bridges project, if you could share a bit about how the multilingual content was chosen, and also how have different musical and poetic cultures evolved over time, and what factors have contributed to these various traditions.
Thank you, Jacqueline. So these are two questions, and the second one is a really big question. I'll start with the first one, the choice of content. I did not have much control on the choice of content. It was mostly Ehsan, and I kind of I joined the project at a stage when it was already in a good shape. So I did help with some of the choice of content. I tried to introduce Kashmiri, and we also introduced Urdu, and some genres that Ehsan was not earlier probably familiar with, which I was researching as part of my own research on languages and poetic cultures around the world. My focus has been endangered languages, and through that I have been trying to explore endangered musical traditions. That's my next stage, because my personal journey also goes through a place which has seen a lot of conflict, and I wanted to work on. I wanted to choose a research topic that will enable me connect with places that I have been deprived of being connected with. So I started my research in exploring languages and some endangered languages of Pakistan and India. So the second part of your question about how the different musical traditions evolved, it's really a big question, and a lot of research has gone into that. And it goes along with the history of human language and human cultures. History of music goes probably as long as we know about human civilization. There's been a lot of literature on how old is music? Is it as old as human civilization? How old is language, for example? Also, there's also research on claims on that language itself was a result of human language, was a result of human capacity to sing, produce musical songs, and rhythmic songs, which are produced by the vocal cords in your voice box. But what was that inspired by? What inspired those initial songs or initial music, which are related? Perhaps the environment, the nature, whatever was there in the nature that we heard, that the human civilization, the earliest prehistoric humans heard or were experiencing in that time. It goes back to thousands and thousands of years. About music, we are told that it's probably was originated when humans had not yet dispersed around the world, which is about the history of human or Homo sapiens themselves. Probably it did originate in Africa, where we claim that human civilization originated, and then different types of different languages evolved over time as people dispersed in different parts of the world, and different musics also, musical cultures, poetic cultures evolved over time, and musical instruments evolved over time, which were also um, part of a product of what we were seeing in the nature. For instance, you have references to the oldest instruments having been found in the form of a bone instrument, which was probably made from the wing. It was a vulture wing bone, a V-shaped bone, which we are told that was perhaps one of the oldest musical instruments that was found. I don't know, in Germany or somewhere. Another musical instrument, which was very, very old, was found that was made of a wooden pipe. So the oldest wooden pipes were discovered probably in Ireland. And then we also have instruments which produced, which had techniques which used polyphony. Like you have an instrument from ancient Greek that was discovered some time ago, and the oldest song itself attested was from somewhere in Syria in the cuneiform writing, which was as old as 3,500 years. So that's some of the things that we have. There were also 7-hole flutes that were found in the Indus Valley civilization. So there's a lot. It's a lot. So I guess that's for now.
Well, honestly, thank you so much, Dr. Munshi. That's fascinating, especially about just like the earliest instruments as being a bone. And it just really speaks to how music is so much a part of a reflection of, you know, mankind, right? And it's such an incredible, you know, it speaks to it's really like speaks to the core of our being. And I was wondering if Dr. Asani, if you could comment on this, on Dr. Munshi's comments as well. And just really, I mean, the question is how can poetic, musical, and literary traditions can serve as a bridge between cultures?
Okay, thank you. You know, I mean, I think this topic is so huge that, you know, we're best like thinking about very specific examples to exemplify how music and poetry can build bridges. And for that, I want to turn to a particular situation, a case study in 1947 in South Asia. Anyone who's familiar with South Asia in 1947 knows that this is a period of the partition, and there were dehumanizing discourses prevalent in South Asia at the time. There still are, where people become targets of violence on account of their caste or their religion or their class, their ethnicity. And you often find that in those kinds of highly polarized situations, that the arts, the literary arts and the performative arts and the poetic arts offer a compelling alternative model for engaging with and understanding human difference, one that actually has endured over time. So let me give you an example. In the partition, it was very common, and it's a sort of a huge tragedy that as, you know, India and Pakistan were created, you know, Hindus and Sikhs who were in what became Pakistan were fleeing to India, and then Muslims who were fleeing to Pakistan. And so there was a mass migration of people, but in the midst of all of this, some of this migration was taking place through trains. And sometimes the trains carrying Hindus and Sikhs from what became Pakistan going into India were targeted by people. You know, they were burned and all the passengers killed. And similarly, you'd find entire train loads of Muslims coming from India being targeted for violence. Now, in the midst of this highly polarized situation, there was a very interesting incident set in a small town in the Punjab, which is on the border, at a place called Arifwala, where a train at the railway station in Arifwala had just arrived. It was carrying Hindu and Sikh passengers on their way to India. And at that railway station in Arifwala, there were groups of angry Muslims who had been incited by their religious leaders to attack this train. And because there had been a train full of Muslims who had been massacred, had come through earlier. And so there this train pulls into the station, and there's an angry mob. And then all of a sudden, this mob became silent. A Sikh who was in the train, apparently under the influence of opium, they say, was hanging out from one of the windows of the train, singing verses from one of the most famous epic poems of Punjabi literature called Heer, and composed around 1776 by the renowned Punjabi poet Waris Shah. The poem tells of a tragic love story between Heer, the daughter of a chieftain, and Ranja, the son of a rival chieftain. So the verses the Sikh were reciting were in a section of the epic in which the poet was criticizing the corrupt and hypocritical mullahs or Muslim leaders who had denied refuge to Ranja. Now, here this Sikh is hanging out from the train, singing these verses in Punjabi, the language, the common language there. And the mob that was on the platform suddenly came to a halt and refused to obey the instructions of the mullah. And literally, the train was saved by the verses of Punjabi poetry, and its passengers left the station without incident. An eyewitness remarked that his eyes half closed, the opium addict sang away, and hatred turned into fellow feeling. Waris Shah's words were working a miracle. The soul of Punjab was working through Waris Shah's soul. So what this actually shows that this Waris Shah's epic represented a fundamental ethnic and cultural unity shared by all Punjabis, irrespective of religious affiliation. And by singing this poem, it dawned on the mob that they were united, that they shared a common humanity with the Sikhs and Hindus who are on the train. And this is what provides us a moving testimony to the powerful role that literary arts can play in the daily lives of people in South Asia. They're not just about entertainment and vehicles, but they're tremendous forces promoting cultural harmony by creating shared understandings of life and common frameworks for moral and cultural understanding.
Wow. Dr. Asani, thank you so much for sharing that particular example, very, very moving example of how, of the ability for music to actually form that bridge, to connect people. And I'd like to direct my next question actually to Ali. And I was wondering if you could share a bit more about your work in the Voices and Bridges project, and specifically also if you could tell us a bit more about the piece El Sueño. Because I'm just thinking of what Dr. Asani has just shared. El Sueño especially, it means dream, and I think it's the first song in the series of the Voices and Bridges project. But I know that from my understanding, the primary theme of the composition was built around immigration, and this idea of movement and migration from going from one place to another, from one person to another. And I was wondering if you could share a bit more about your role in the project and also this piece.
Thank you, Dr. Jacqueline. That's me and Ehsan always had a dream to do a kind of multicultural and multilingual projects since many years ago, because our friendship started about 20 years ago, and we worked on many projects in Iran and later in the States. So we had the idea of doing a multicultural project. And so it started with research about different cultural aspects, about different regions, literature, poetry, and also music. So, and we started to find the ways to make connection, make integration between cultural aspects from different regions, Persian and other regions. And it was amazing that we could find a poet from two different poems from two different poets from two different culture that they are talking about the same idea, or they are illustrate the same pictures. For instance, about El Sueño, two poets are talking about the dream, a dream that has gone, it's hidden, a dream which looks to be unreachable. And both of them talk about darkness, about disappointment, and we try to connect these two ideas to each other, also in terms of musical aspects. So we need to research about musical aspects, different aspects, instrumentation, rhythmic pattern, melodic pattern, and other aspects. So, and it was a great moment that Ehsan came to me with an idea derived from a Spanish tango and told me, Ali, what do you think about this? And it was the starting point of the project. You will hear this idea at the beginning of the studio, and it's also a recurring motif. You can hear it in different versions throughout the whole piece. And so we also started to do research about other regions and find the best way to make connection and integration about the instrument, a specific instrument. For example, we had research about how these instruments are sound and how we can find the way to mix them with Western instrument and Western musical language and compositional techniques. In El Sueño, you will hear a combination of Western musical instruments and compositional techniques with Spanish guitar and also Persian Kamanche. And it's a very climax in the piece that you hear the Persian Kamanche, that where you can hear about darkness, about disappointment, and night. You're trying to also create a kind of meaning, and you may hear a very beautiful melody played by Kamanche that you can hear suddenly a kind of hope after the pictures that shows disappointment. You can hear suddenly a melody that sounds like, okay, there is still is hope. And it's a very interesting point in the piece. It is climax, and then you hear the cellos in the depths of the orchestra, that you feel kind of hope, hopefulness inside in the depths. And also another important aspect that we try to do in the whole project and also in Australia, it's to make different colors in each piece. Each piece has its specific instrumentation, has its own style and its own texture and structure. As I said about this project and also about the El Sueño, you will see two poets are talking about dream, but dream which looks to be unreachable. But we are going to say, no, it's not unreachable. We can find it because, as I said, we are creating moments that you feel hope in the piece, and it is become as I said, it makes connection between two different languages and make kind of unity. And I can go further and say it makes peacefulness, and it's friendship between different regions and cultures.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ali. So without further ado, we would love to present and play for you all the video to El Sueño.
اما ز همه کس خالیش ریخته بر سر آوار آوار این منم مانده به زندان شب تیره که باز شب همه شب شب همه شب
fuera como dice una tregua.
شب همه شب شکست خواب به چشمم
Puro reposo de la mente.
گوش بر زنگ کاروان هستم
Porque si te despierta bruscamente
با نواهای نیم زنده زدون هم انان گشته هم زبان هستم.
Thank you. That was a beautiful example of, as Ali, as you were describing, and just continuing our conversation on thinking about connecting and joining perhaps multiple cultures into one composition. I would like to direct my next question to Dr. Asani, and regarding your particular research on Islamic devotional poetry, such as Qawwali. And I was wondering if you could comment a bit on this and on the interaction of Middle Eastern and Indian poetic traditions.
Yes, I'd be happy to say a few words about that. Mm-hmm. You know, when one thinks about the Qawwali, there's a name that gets associated with the Qawwali of a very famous poet, musician, historian, who lived in the 14th century. 12th century. Amir Khusro. Amir Khusro is regarded today as among the most prominent builders of bridges across difference. He is widely recognized as the founder of what's called Hindustani culture, a composite culture that draws on both Muslim and Hindu heritage, and whose roots go back to, as I said, the late 12th century. Khusro himself lived at a time when several dynasties of Central Asian and Turkic origin had established kingdoms in northern part of the subcontinent. And since these dynasties used Persian as their language of administration and culture, this part of South Asia became part of the Persianate world, which connected regions and peoples stretching from Bengal all the way to Turkey. Now, Amir Khusro was the son of a Turkic father and an Indian mother. And he straddled very actively, he straddled across these different worlds and actively engaged with these different worlds. So as an early cosmopolitan, through his Persian poetry, he identified on the one hand with this larger Persian literary world, while through his compositions in Hindu, the local language, the Indian language, he showed his affiliation to the Indic world. So famously called Tuti-e-Hind, which means the parrot of India, on account of his eloquence, he synthesized the multiple strands of his identity and manifested it through these various cross-cultural pollinations in language and poetry. He is credited, for example, for creating bilingual poetry in which one verse was in Persian and another one was in Hindi. And he's said to have invented the sitar and the genre of the qawwali. And the qawwali is very interesting because it is a genre where you'll find that when it's recited, the verses can use different languages, Persian, Hindi, Urdu, sometimes Arabic, and so on, appealing to the audience, trying to excite an emotional response from the audience because you have a multicultural and diverse audience listening. And so the use of multiple languages, but also the use of multiple symbols and metaphors, was very much part of this qawwali genre that he created. And this has become, the most prominent form of, I would say, intercultural musical and poetic dialogue in South Asia today. And the gifted genius of Amir Khusro is remembered still today at a very popular level, at a mass level, through the many, many songs that are attributed to him. As Jawaharlal Nehru, the first sort of prime minister of India, remarks in his book, Discovery of India, I do not know if there is any other instance anywhere of songs written 600 years ago, maintaining their popularity and mass appeal in being still sung today without any change of words. And this is very powerful testimony to, again, showing that this experiment in bridging different worlds, the Middle Eastern, the Persian world, the Turkic world with the South Asian world, both poetically and mystically, really was something that reflected the cosmopolitan culture of the time. And it's something that touched people deeply in the heart, and that, I think, explains why this poetry continues to remain important today, with notwithstanding, all the political polarizations that take place in South Asia that try to divide Hindu from Muslim and so on and so forth. So they've become active forces of resistance against polarization.
Thank you very much, Dr. Asani. That's beautiful. That's wonderfully stated. A very complex tradition, but what you're talking about language as being healing, as being transformative, it has that power to do so. And so my last question is actually for everyone here, and just sort of wanting to hear, based on, having learned about this project, the Voices and Bridges project, having worked on the Voices and Bridges projects, what are your messages or hopes or goals with this project? And what are you hoping that the viewers and the listeners of the project be able to take away?
Do you have a particular order in which?
No, I don't. Anyone would like to jump in? Dr. Munshi,
I can start.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I have also been exploring the transformative power of language, looking at different languages. I feel poetry is the most powerful tool in all different forms of verbal arts to express yourself, because it kind of helps alleviate the fears that we have in inventing uh, our basic feelings, underlying feelings. We people are afraid of talking about their feelings and about their pain. When you ask them to tell your story, they don't tell their story without fear, but through songs and through poetry, it's a medium to to tell your story without being afraid. So I think it's a very, very powerful way of communicating your story without being judged or without being confronted, basically. So I think it really connects people, the song.
Mhm.
That was my one
Oh, Asani, you're
brief.
muted.
Yeah,
Apologies.
that's fine. I guess that's fine. Am I right? Was it about the targeted audiences or like who's listening to it? Is this,
Just, yeah, anyone who's listening to the project, you know, your thoughts of why you wanted to do the project and what you're hoping that people take away from listening to the project.
okay, so one of the most important things, I mean, to me from this project is that the first question which came to my mind was, what are the differences between the languages? So these differences make the cultures differences. Yeah, of course, the most powerful tools is poem and music. That's why we picked these two tools to talk about the voices and bridges. But dialect of the language is the most common, most different part of the languages and accents and how the people use the words or structure their speech. And all of these are because of the geographical distance and because all these social factors which happen between these countries and cultures. But at the Voices and Bridges, it doesn't matter if you know Arabic or you know Farsi or you know French. The feeling or the motion of the music, including the poems, brings this to you. I mean, you can feel it delivers to you. You can feel the el sueño as a dream, or the dream which is gone, or at the naznine, the loss of the naznine or whatever. I mean, this is what I think about the Voices and Bridges. It doesn't matter if you know that particular language or the definition of the language. You can listen to it and you can it express. The music express itself to the audiences.
Oh, I
Yeah,
apologize. Ali, you're muted.
Oh,
Oh, I see.
okay,
Yeah,
go
yeah.
ahead.
According to what Ehsan said, I also wanted to add. I think the title is telling us everything. Voices and bridges makes connection, and connection brings friendship and peace and unity. So, and this connection in this project is going to be happen through sounds, music, and words. Yeah, or voices. Yeah, I just wanted to say, yeah, the principal, to me, the principal idea of the whole project is peace and unity. Yeah.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add to this conversation the way I sort of see the role of poetry and music, because this is also transmitting knowledge, and I think the kind of knowledge that's being transmitted is what one can call heart-mind knowledge. It's not for the mind, it's discursive, but there's certain types of knowledge that you just get through emotion. You cannot get intellectually. And the power of, this combination of poetry and music is that it is appealing both, to the mind as well as to the heart. And that's a very powerful combination. where it's absorbing your entire being. It's not just intellectual, it's getting to your soul. And that's where I think the transformative power of this, what I call this heart-mind knowledge, it's magic that it plays on people, because it's addressing them as, holistic beings.
Thank you all. I wanted to say that for myself personally as well, I think I found the project to be truly rewarding to listen to, because I felt the many, many, many layers of how, and I was very impressed by how you were able to thread like a variety of cultures, so many cultures together, but also threading and layering, different literature, different religious traditions, different, art forms. And I just thought it was a really, I think this idea of what Dr. Asani is describing, this heart-mind connection, I think is just something that I think even just globally we need right now in this time, to be able to connect, for communities to connect, because there is, we are in a time of global pandemic and isolation. And I think, being able to think about, to be transported, truly transported in some way, I think through music, through art, literature, I think it's incredibly important and a very, very important contribution, I think, to knowledge as well. So I do want to thank all of you for being here with us for this conversation today. And I really appreciate being able to moderate and be part of this. I do want to also thank the Aga Khan Council for the Central United States for bringing this program to our communities. And also really thank you to specifically to Almas Moskowala for bringing us all together. I also wish to thank Ismaili TV for hosting this event virtually for us. And I think it's very fitting that we are going to play one more video to close the program, and that is the video for Naznine, which is another song, a composition as part of the Voices and Bridges project. But I think, and Ahsan, maybe you could share a bit more information about Naznine, but I believe it is the first collaboration that we know of that's between Kashmiri and Iranian artists, possibly. Am I correct?
Possibly, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It's the first collaboration between me and Ellie, and me and Ellie, Dr. Sadaf, which I'm very glad that I met her. And then because it was at the beginning of the pandemic. One of my concerts in New York got canceled, and it was a very good pleasure to join the Dr. Sadaf's program, because I was at the Dallas and I went there and I saw Ehsan Matoori, one of the great vocalists at that area, and Dr. Sadaf helped me to move forward with the Naznine, which is the story. It's a lovely story. I guess it's like a Kashmiri love story. I love
the love story.
But the whole music inspired by that folk song called Purima.
Full moon. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Purima, I guess it's a love story. It's a Kashmiri love story, which I really love it. And I just try to bring some melody from the Farsi part to this Purima and beautiful song.
I think it's very fitting. It's sending a message of love to the world, I think. So. Well, thank you all so much for being a part of this program. I can't thank you all enough for being here, really, truly. And so I think without further ado, I'd love to play. We should go ahead and play Naznine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
در بیابانی دور که نروید جز خار چه نتوفت جز باد، که نخیزد جز مرگ، خفته در خاک کسی شب از نیمه رفته است، بگذار تا سپیده بخندد به روی ما. بنشین مرا حکایت وقت دیگر مگو، شاید نماند فرصت دیدار دیگری.
ما چون نور جبینه یار میانه، ما چون نور جبینه یار میانه. نازنینه 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 نازنینه، ما چون نور جبینه یار میانه.
بنشین مرا هنوز به کامت ندیده ای، بنشین مرا هنوز کلامی نگفته ای، بنشین مرا چه غم که شب از نیمه رفته است، بنشین که با خیال تو شبها نخفته ای.
برک رستا چو برک ولی کت نظرا برکای تلی، برک رستا چو برک ولی کت نظرا برکای تلی. گرون کا سانجونی شبینه یار میانه، گرون کا سانجونی شبینه یار میانه. نازنینه 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 نازنینه، ما چون نور جبینه یار میانه.
تو رفته ای و من از راه های دور میبینمت نخفته بر آن پرنیان سر. اینک تو رفته ای و من از راه های دور میبینمت نهفته نگاه از نگاه ما.
نازنینه
گریز و تو از خواب در گریز، با خیشتن به خلوت دل میکنی ستیز. خواب از تو در گریز و تو از خواب در گریز، با خیشتن به خلوت دل میکنی ستیز.
دست پاچیت را بطنه مشک موتر چوی هنی هنی، سین صاف چون گچو اینه یارم یانه، سین صاف چون گچو اینه یارم یانه. نازلی نی 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 نازلی نی.
خط